The great tragedy of life is not a lack of knowledge. We know what is required. We have the books, the plans, the strategies. We know the path. The great tragedy is the enormous, barren desert between knowing the path and walking the path. It is the curse of almost, the story of someday, the endless, exhausting cycle of starting strong with fire in your heart, only to find yourself weeks later, standing in the cold ashes of your own faded enthusiasm, right back where you began. Why? Why do most people live their entire lives in this frustrating space between the person they could be and the person their daily actions prove them to be? It is because they believe consistency is a feeling to be found, a stroke of luck, or a gift of motivation that is bestowed upon a chosen few. And that belief is a lie. Consistency is not a feeling. It is a decision. It is a cold, hard philosophical choice to show up when it is difficult, when it is boring, and when the only person watching is you. This is not a lecture of gentle encouragement. This is a lecture on the architecture of that decision. It is a deep study of the 10 fundamental truths that forge an unbreakable will. If you are tired of starting over, if you are ready to finally, once and for all, close the gap between your knowledge and your action, then you must not leave. The next hour could be the most important hour of your year, because it is the hour you stop being most people. The great tragedy of modern life is not a lack of opportunity, and it is not a lack of knowledge. We are, by all historical measures, living in an age of unprecedented abundance in both. The collected wisdom of the ages, the strategies for health, for wealth, for wisdom itself, are available to us with the click of a button. We have more information in our pockets than the greatest kings and scholars of the past could have ever dreamed of. We are, in short, drowning in knowledge. And yet, we are starving for wisdom. For there is a vast, empty, and tragic chasm in human life. It is the great divide between knowing what to do and actually, consistently doing it. We know the path. We have the maps. We can describe the destination in vivid detail. But we remain standing at the trailhead, perpetually preparing for a journey we never begin. This is the great human tragedy, the tragedy of knowing, but not doing. Imagine a man who inherits the key to the world's greatest library. Inside, every book ever written on success, philosophy, and personal achievement is at his disposal. He spends his life in this library. He reads every page. He memorizes the quotes of the masters. He understands the theories of discipline, the science of habit formation, the art of financial independence. He can debate these topics with breathtaking eloquence, but he never leaves the library. He never applies the knowledge. He never lives the philosophy. And so he dies unhealthy, unhappy, and poor, but with the profound consolation that he knew how to be healthy, happy, and rich. He died with a head full of sterile knowledge. This is the state in which most people live their lives. They are brilliant, lifelong students in the library of potential, but they are failing students in the laboratory of results. This is the curse of most people. And when I use that phrase, most people, I do not say it with judgment or condemnation. It is not an insult. It is a mathematical and philosophical observation. Most people are not lazy. They are not unintelligent. They are not without dreams. They are simply living by default. They are caught in the powerful, invisible currents of a life lived without deliberate architectural design. To break this curse, we must first diagnose it. We must understand the anatomy of inconsistency. What are these powerful currents that keep the vast majority of people trapped in the chasm between their knowledge and their action? There are three. The first is the great drift toward comfort. The human brain, for all its miraculous capabilities, is at its core a survival machine, and its primary directive for survival is the conservation of energy. It is programmed, over millions of years of evolution, to follow the path of least resistance. And the work of consistency, the daily, repetitive, often unglamorous work of building something meaningful is, by its very definition, uncomfortable. It requires effort. It requires energy. And so, the default programming of the mind will always create a gentle but persistent pull toward the comfortable, the easy, and the familiar. To be consistent, you must learn to consciously and deliberately row against this powerful natural current every single day. The second is the great drift toward distraction. We live in an environment that has been expertly engineered to hijack your attention. The carnival of distraction, as we have called it. Every notification, every advertisement, every piece of breaking news, is a carefully crafted attempt to pull your focus away from your own chosen path and onto someone else's agenda. And the quiet, focused, deep work required for consistency cannot be done in the midst of this noise. It is like trying to have a profound, intimate conversation in the middle of a screaming rock concert. If you do not build a fortress for your focus, the forces of distraction will overrun your territory and plunder your most valuable resource, your time. And the third, and perhaps most subtle, is the great drift towards social confirmation. We are social creatures. We unconsciously model our behavior, our standards, and our expectations on the people around us. And if you are surrounded by most people, people who start and stop, people who talk a bigger game than they play, people who negotiate with their commitments, then that level of inconsistency will begin to feel normal. It will become your accepted baseline. To choose the path of unbreakable consistency is often to choose a path of loneliness. It is the decision to hold yourself to a standard that those around you may not understand or respect. It is the decision to be an outlier. These three great drifts toward comfort, toward distraction, and toward social confirmation are the invisible currents that keep most people trapped. And the experience of being trapped in these currents is what creates the painful, exhausting cycle of starting over. You know this cycle. It begins with the spark of resolution. It is January 1st. It is your birthday. You have just watched an inspiring video. A powerful surge of emotion convinces you that this time it will be different. This is followed by the sprint of initial enthusiasm. For a week, maybe two, you are a model of discipline. You are unstoppable. You are living the life of your highest self. But then, you collide with the wall of reality. The work becomes difficult. It becomes tedious. The initial emotional high evaporates. This is the long, hard, boring middle of the journey. This is where the negotiation and rationalization begins. The internal lawyer starts its case. You're tired. You deserve a break. You've been so good. One day off won't hurt. You can always start again fresh on Monday. These are the whispers of mediocrity, dressed in the language of reason. And this leads inevitably to the quiet quit. You do not announce your failure. You simply stop. The gym visits become less frequent and then cease. The book is left on the nightstand, unopened. The project file is moved to the back of the drawer, and you drift until the pain of your inaction becomes great enough to seek out the next spark of resolution, and the entire soul-crushing cycle begins again. This is the curse, and it is a curse forged from a single foundational misunderstanding. It is the mistaken belief that consistency is a feeling. It is the lie that you must first feel motivated, inspired, or energized in order to act. Let us be perfectly clear. Relying on your feelings to dictate your actions is to build your life's architecture upon the weather. It is to give the power of your destiny to an unreliable and temperamental servant. Imagine you owned a great enterprise, and you had an employee who was brilliant, productive, and incredibly effective. But this employee only showed up to work when they felt like it. Some days they would work for 18 hours straight, and then they might disappear for 3 weeks. Would you build your company's future on this person? Of course not. It would be business suicide. Yet, this is precisely how most people manage the grand enterprise of their own lives. They have made their feelings, their motivation, their inspiration, their energy the star employee, and they wonder why the business is always on the verge of bankruptcy. You must demote your feelings. They are not the chief executive officer of your life. They are the weather report. You should be aware of them. You should note whether it is sunny or stormy. But you would never let the weather report decide whether or not the architect shows up to the construction site. The work must be done in all weather. The great secret is this: genuine, sustainable motivation is not the cause of action. It is the child of action. It is a byproduct. It is the result. Imagine you are trying to start a campfire on a cold, dark night. You are freezing. You need the warmth of the fire to feel better. The philosophy of most people is to sit in the cold, shivering, and wait for the feeling of warmth to arrive. They are waiting for the fire to give them the energy and motivation they need to go and gather the wood. It is an absurd and futile strategy. The architect, the person of consistency, understands the physics of fire. They know that the action must precede the reward. They perform the cold, uncomfortable, and difficult work of gathering the kindling and the logs. They patiently strike the spark, over and over, shielding it from the wind. And then, once the fire is lit, it begins to produce the very thing they were seeking: warmth, light, and energy. Action is the gathering of the wood. Consistent action is the tending of the fire. The feeling of motivation is the warmth the fire produces. You must stop waiting for the warmth. You must get up and go gather the wood. This brings us to the great declaration, the foundational decision upon which an entire life of consistency is built. If consistency is not a feeling, what is it? It is a decision. But it is not a small, casual, daily decision. It is not a negotiation. It is a foundational, philosophical, identity-level decision. It is the decision made once, in a moment of profound and sober clarity, that says, I am the person who does what I say I will do, period. It is a declaration of your new personal constitution. Once this decision is truly made, at the deepest level of your being, the daily negotiation ends. The endless, energy-draining internal debate is over. The question is no longer, do I feel like doing it today? That question has become irrelevant. It is a foolish and unsophisticated question. The only question that remains is, given the realities of today, how will I get it done? It is a subtle but monumental shift. It is the shift from a democracy of moods, where your laziest and most fearful impulses get an equal vote, to a monarchy of your highest commitment. You have decided what matters. The debate is closed. The law has been passed. The rest is simply a matter of execution. This is the work that lies before us. This entire lecture is not about finding a feeling. It is about forging a decision. It is about giving you the intellectual and philosophical tools to make that decision so real, so profound, and so deeply ingrained that it becomes the new operating system for your life. The 10 truths we are about to explore are the 10 articles of this new personal constitution. Each one is a load-bearing wall in the architecture of this decision. They are the practical mechanics of how you live out this commitment, day by day. So I will say it one more time. If you stay, you will not leave here with a temporary, fleeting feeling of inspiration that will fade by tomorrow morning. That is not my promise to you. You will leave with the architectural blueprint for a decision that, once truly made, has the power to change everything. A decision that has the power to finally close the chasm between the person you know you can be and the person you are today. A decision that will finally allow you to stop being most people. Let us begin. We have drawn a line in the sand. We have made a distinction between the path of most people, the wide, well-trodden road of inconsistency and quiet regret, and the path of the architect, the path of deliberate, disciplined design. We have diagnosed the great human tragedy, the vast, barren desert between knowing the path and actually walking the path. Our purpose here is to build a bridge across that desert. And the first pillar of that bridge, the very first principle upon which all consistency is built, is designed to combat the silent guardian that stands at the edge of that chasm, the force that prevents so many from ever taking the first courageous step across. That guardian has a name. It is hesitation. And so, our first principle is the discipline we must master to defeat this guardian. It is the principle we call the art of immediacy. Let us begin by performing an autopsy on a dead dream. Pick any great ambition you have ever had that now lies dormant in the graveyard of your good intentions. A business you wanted to start, a book you wanted to write, a state of health you wanted to achieve. Why did it die? It was not from a lack of desire. It was not from a lack of knowledge. It died from 1,000 small cuts. And the knife that inflicted every one of those cuts was hesitation. Hesitation is the silent killer of dreams. It is a poison that, administered in small, daily doses, paralyzes the will and corrodes the spirit. It is the space between thought and action, and in that space lies the entirety of your lost potential. We must deconstruct this enemy to understand its power. What is hesitation? It is not thinking. It is not planning. Prudent thought and intelligent planning are the work of the architect. Hesitation is something else entirely. It is a corrosive form of delay. It has 3 dimensions. First, hesitation is a physical state. It is the state of inertia. It is the law of the universe that an object at rest will stay at rest. When you are sitting still, thinking about the work, you are in a state of physical inertia. The longer you remain in that state, the more force, the more willpower, the more energy is required to break out of it. Second, hesitation is a mental state. It is the dreaded analysis paralysis. The mind, in an effort to protect you from the risk of failure, gets caught in an infinite loop of what-ifs. What if I'm not ready? What if it's not the perfect plan? What if people judge me? This loop feels like productive thinking, but it is not. It is the mind spinning its wheels in the mud, digging you deeper and deeper into the state of inaction. And third, most powerfully, hesitation is an emotional state. It is the physical manifestation of fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, fear of discomfort. And hesitation is the anesthetic that temporarily numbs that fear. By delaying the action, you delay the possibility of confronting your fear. And so, hesitation becomes a deeply ingrained comfort habit. Imagine an idea arrives in your mind as a brilliant, hot spark of inspiration. The tinder of your resources, your time, your current energy, your enthusiasm is dry and ready to catch fire. Hesitation is a slow, seeping moisture. The longer you wait, the longer you think it over, the more this moisture of doubt and fear dampens the tinder, until eventually, the spark, no matter how bright it once was, can no longer ignite a flame. The opportunity is gone. This is why our first principle is so critical. The art of immediacy is the discipline of striking the spark while the tinder is still dry. Now, let us examine the physics of progress. The amateur believes that progress begins with a feeling of motivation. The professional, the architect, understands that this is backward. Progress begins with a simple physical law. Action creates momentum. I want you to imagine a large, heavy, stalled car on a flat road. Your goal is to get it to the bottom of the hill, a mile away. The first push against that car is incredibly difficult. You exert a tremendous amount of force, and the car barely moves an inch. It is a moment of immense resistance. This is your first action when you are in a state of hesitation. It is the hardest part of the entire journey. The amateur, the person of most people, gives up after this first push. They conclude, this is too hard. It's not working. The car is too heavy. But the professional understands the physics of momentum. They know the first push is the hardest. They gather themselves and give it a second push. This one is still hard, but the car moves 2 inches. The third push moves it 6. The 10th push moves it a foot. Soon, a miraculous transformation occurs. The car is rolling, slowly at first, and then faster. The same amount of effort that once moved it an inch now moves it several feet. It has momentum. Eventually, it reaches the crest of the hill, and the force of gravity takes over. Hesitation is the act of standing in front of the stalled car, analyzing the angle of the road, checking the tire pressure, and debating the best possible place to push. The art of immediacy is the simple, brute force, and brilliant act of placing your hands on the car and pushing. This momentum is not just physical, it is psychological, and it is the true source of the feeling we call motivation. The action-feeling loop is the engine of consistency. It works like this. You take an immediate, small action. That action produces a small, tangible result. Even if the result is just, I opened the document, or I put on my running shoes. This small result gives your brain a piece of evidence that you are the kind of person who follows through. This evidence creates a genuine, earned feeling of competence and control. That feeling is what we call motivation. And that authentic feeling of motivation makes the next action slightly easier. This is the upward spiral of consistency. You do not find motivation. You create it through the friction of immediate and often uncomfortable action. Furthermore, and this is a crucial point, action is the forge of identity. You are not what you think you are. You are not what you say you are. You are what you repeatedly do. Your identity is the sum total of your actions. Every time you have an idea and you allow it to die in the swamp of hesitation, you cast a vote for an identity. You are voting for the identity of the person who thinks but does not do. The person of good intentions but no results. The spectator. But every time you have an idea and you act on it with immediacy, no matter how small the action, you cast a vote for a different identity. You are voting for the identity of the person who executes. The person whose word is bond. The participant. The architect. There is no more powerful force for change than a shift in your own self-image. And the only way to shift that image is to provide yourself with a mountain of irrefutable evidence. Action is that evidence. Imagine 2 generals, both facing a formidable enemy. The first general is a master of theory. He spends weeks in his tent, perfecting his plan of attack. He analyzes every possible scenario, every contingency. He waits for the perfect weather, the perfect intelligence report, the perfect moment to strike. But while he waits, the enemy fortifies its position. His own troops, waiting in idleness, begin to lose their morale and their sharp edge. He has a perfect plan, but the war is being lost in his tent. The second general understands the art of immediacy. Seeing a small window of opportunity, He acts immediately with a decisive, focused strike. It is not a grand, war-ending battle. It is an imperfect action. He takes some losses, but the action creates momentum. It provides him with real-world, invaluable data about the enemy's strengths and weaknesses, and it builds the confidence and the fighting spirit of his army. The first general lost the war to hesitation. The second is on the path to winning it through action. You are the general of your own life. You must stop losing the war in the tent of your own mind. So how do we practice this art? How do we, in practical terms, close the gap between thought and movement? The first tactic is the rule of the first 5 seconds. The moment you have the impulse to act on one of your important goals, your brain's survival mechanism, your internal lawyer, begins to build its case for comfort and delay. Neurological research has shown that you have a window of about 5 seconds before that resistance mechanism kicks in and floods your mind with excuses. You must, therefore, learn to physically move within that 5-second window. The impulse appears, I should work on that report. You do not debate it. You begin a simple, internal countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you hit 1, you physically move. You stand up. You walk to your desk. You open the laptop. This is not a motivational trick. It is a neurological tool to override your brain's built-in hesitation response. It is the starting pistol for your personal race against inaction. The second tactic is to embrace the philosophy of the imperfect start. The primary reason we hesitate is because we are attached to a perfect outcome. The goal of the first action is not to be perfect. The goal of the first action is simply to break inertia. That is its sole and sacred purpose. You must give yourself permission to do it badly at first. Write a terrible first sentence. It can be edited later. Do a clumsy and awkward set of 5 push-ups. Form can be improved later. Send an initial email that is not a work of literary genius. It can be followed up later. The magnificent imperfection of an action taken is infinitely superior to the sterile perfection of an action delayed. The master architect knows that the first draft of any great blueprint is full of flaws. But without that first, flawed draft, there can be no second, improved draft. The third tactic is to shrink the initial target. This connects deeply with our later principles. We hesitate because the action we are contemplating feels too large. The art of immediacy requires you to shrink your definition of the initial action to something almost laughably small. The action is not write for an hour. The immediate action is open the document. The action is not go for a 5-mile run. The immediate action is put on your running shoes. The action is not start a business. The immediate action is do one Google search for a potential competitor. You must master the art of identifying and executing the smallest possible physical movement that signifies the beginning of the task. That is the pebble that starts the avalanche. That is the first push on the stalled car. And finally, we must confront the true face of hesitation. We must name the enemy. Thinking too much, planning too much, analyzing too much. This is a sophisticated disguise. It is fear, masquerading as intelligence. It feels responsible. It feels prudent. It feels like the smart thing to do. But in your heart, you know the truth. It is the voice of the resistance. It is the part of you that is terrified of failure, terrified of judgment, terrified of stepping out of the comfortable harbor of your current existence. And a ship in the harbor is safe. But that is not what ships are built for. You must calculate the true cost of waiting. It is not a neutral act. Every day that you wait, you are not just standing still. You are moving backward, because the world is moving forward without you. Your confidence is eroding. Your self-trust is diminishing. And the compounding interest of regret is accumulating. The art of immediacy, then, is the gateway to this entire philosophy. It is the key that unlocks the door to the construction site. Without it, all the other 9 principles remain beautiful, but purely theoretical. It is your declaration of war on the passive life. It is the choice, made in this moment and renewed in every moment, to be a cause, not an effect, to be a force, not an object. But once you master this art, once you take that first, decisive, immediate step onto the path, you will be instantly confronted by a new and relentless enemy. The 1,000 daily distractions that seek to pull you off that path and back into the swamp of mediocrity. And this brings us to our second principle, the discipline of how to build an unbreachable fortress for your focus. We have mastered the art of immediacy. We have learned to wage war on hesitation, to close the gap between thought and action, and to take that first, critical, momentum-building step onto the path. We have broken the inertia of rest. We are now in motion. But the moment you step onto the path of discipline, a new and relentless battle begins. The world will not stand idly by and applaud your newfound resolve. The currents of most people do not simply let you go. The moment you begin to move with purpose, 1,000 forces will conspire to pull you back into the swamp of mediocrity. This brings us to our second, and in our modern age, perhaps the most urgent and defining principle of all. It is the discipline that makes all other disciplines possible. It is the principle of building a fortress for your focus. Let us begin by diagnosing the great, undeclared war of our time. It is not a war of nations or ideologies. It is a war for your attention. The most powerful and intelligent economic forces in the world are engaged in a relentless, zero-sum battle to capture and monetize every available second of your conscious experience. Every notification, every headline, every algorithm, every piece of content is a weapon meticulously designed by armies of engineers to hijack your neurological reward systems and to keep you in a state of perpetual, low-grade distraction. In this new economy, your attention is not just a resource. It is the most valuable asset you possess. It is the currency of genius. It is the raw material of creation. It is the very director of your life's energy. For it is a simple and profound truth. Where your attention goes, your life goes. The sum total of a person's life is nothing more than the sum total of what they have paid attention to. To give this asset away cheaply, to allow it to be plundered and fragmented by the trivial and the urgent, is the greatest of all personal tragedies. Imagine you are the ruler of a small but incredibly wealthy kingdom. The immense wealth of this kingdom is your finite and precious attention. Now, imagine that this kingdom has no walls, no gates, and no guards. Anyone can wander in at any time to take a piece of your treasure. Merchants are shouting their wares in your throne room. Jesters are demanding you watch their performances. Foreign armies have set up camp in your royal courtyard, each one vying for a piece of your territory. As the ruler, how could you possibly govern in such chaos? How could you think clearly, make wise long-term decisions, or build anything of lasting substance? You could not. Your entire reign would be a frantic, reactive, and exhausting exercise in managing chaos. You would not be a ruler. You would be a hostage. This is the state of the unfocused mind. This is the state in which most people live every single day. And it is the primary reason why their attempts at consistency always fail. They are trying to build a cathedral in the middle of a carnival. To build a life of discipline, you must first become the sovereign of your own mind. You must declare your attention a protected territory. You must build the walls. You must man the gates. You must build a fortress. To do this, we must first understand the anatomy of the enemy. We use the word distraction, but it is not a single entity. The invaders come in two forms. The first are the external distractions. These are the obvious invaders. They are the frontal assault on your fortress. It is the buzz of your phone. It is the ding of the email notification. It is the coworker who interrupts you in the middle of a deep thought. It is the television droning on in the background. These are the loud, visible enemies of your focus. The second, and far more insidious, are the internal distractions. These are the spies and traitors already within the walls. It is the sudden, unrelated thought that pops into your head. It is the nagging worry about a future event. It is the inexplicable urge to just quickly check the news, or your bank account, or your social media feed. And we must be radically honest about the nature of these internal distractions. We often do not just get distracted, we actively seek distraction. Why? Because the work of consistency, the purposeful boredom we spoke of, is often uncomfortable. It requires effort. It forces us to confront our own limitations. And the human mind, in its endless quest for comfort, will search for any available escape route. The phone is not the problem. Our desire to escape into the phone is the problem. Distraction is a flight from the discomfort of meaningful effort. It is a sophisticated form of procrastination. Now, you may think, what is the harm in a small interruption? A 30-second glance at my phone? This is a catastrophic miscalculation. You must understand the high cost of a small interruption. Neurological science speaks of a concept called attention residue. When you are focused on a primary, difficult task, and you switch your attention, even for a moment, to a secondary task like reading a text message, a residue of your attention remains stuck on the secondary task when you attempt to return. Your brain does not cleanly switch back. A part of it is still thinking about the text, the email, the headline. And studies have shown it can take upwards of 20 to 25 minutes to regain the same level of deep, uninterrupted focus you had before the interruption. That 30-second distraction was not 30 seconds. It was a 20-minute wound to your productivity. If you suffer 3 or 4 such interruptions in an hour, you have spent the entire hour in a state of fractured, shallow, and ineffective attention. You have been busy, but you have made no real progress. Consider the master artisan, the watchmaker, the calligrapher, the sculptor. They do not work in the midst of chaos. They create a sanctuary. They work in a quiet, dedicated space. They lay out their tools with precision. Before they begin their work, they often engage in a small ritual. A moment of silence, a few deep breaths to collect and unify their attention. They understand at the deepest level that the quality of their attention will be directly infused into the quality of their work. They are not just performing a task. They are engaged in a sacred ritual of focus. We must bring this same reverence to our own essential work. So how do we build this fortress? How do we, in practical, architectural terms, defend our sacred ground? The design has 3 primary components. The first component is the moat. The most effective way to defeat an enemy is to not have to fight them in the first place. A moat creates distance. It makes it difficult for the enemy to even reach your walls. You must build a moat of distance between you and your primary sources of distraction. This has a physical dimension. The most powerful productivity tool of the 21st century is the simple act of putting your phone in another room when you are engaged in deep work. This single act creates a physical moat that eliminates 1,000 potential battles for your attention. It means designing a dedicated, clean, and clutter-free workspace, a space that signals to your brain that its only purpose is for focused effort. And it has a digital dimension. It is the scorched earth policy. It is the courageous act of permanently deleting the applications that you know are nothing more than time thieves. It is the discipline of going into your system settings and turning off every single non-essential notification. That buzz, that banner, that little red dot, they are the enemy's scouts sent to probe your defenses. Do not allow them on your territory. You must be ruthless. The second component is the walls. The walls are the boundaries you build around your time. This is where the principle of rhythm, which we will discuss later, becomes critical. The walls of your fortress are built block by block in your calendar. A deep work block scheduled from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. is a declaration. It is a statement that, during this period, the walls are up and the drawbridge is raised. Nothing and no one gets in. This requires you to build communication boundaries with the world. You must train the people in your life on how to interact with you. A simple autoresponder on your email that says, "Thank you for your message. I check and respond to emails twice a day. At 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. is a powerful act of building a wall. It resets the world's expectation of your immediate availability. You are teaching them that your focus is not available on demand. The third component is the guards. Even with a moat and high walls, an enemy may occasionally slip through. You need guards active, in-the-moment techniques to deal with these internal and external breaches. The primary tool of your guards is the capture, don't act method. When an internal distraction arises, a brilliant new idea, a task you suddenly remember you need to do, a worry that pops into your head, the temptation is to immediately act on it. This is a fatal error. This is the spy opening the gates from the inside. Instead, you must train your guards to capture it. Keep a simple capture notebook or a digital file open. The moment the thought appears, you quickly write it down, externalizing it from your mind. And then you immediately, without judgment, return your focus to the primary task. You have honored the thought, you have captured it, but you have not allowed it to derail you. Another tool of the guards is the focus ritual. This is a short, repeatable routine you perform at the beginning of every focus block. It can be as simple as clearing your desk, pouring a glass of water, taking 3 deep breaths, and speaking your intention for the session out loud. For the next 90 minutes, I will focus exclusively on writing the introduction to this report. This ritual is a signal. It is the changing of the guard. It tells your brain that the period of open gates is over, and the period of deep, protected focus has begun. When you begin to implement this architecture, the moat, the walls, and the guards, your life will begin to transform. You will shift from a life of shallow, frantic busyness to a life of deep, meaningful effectiveness. You will discover that you can accomplish more in a single 90-minute uninterrupted focus block than you previously did in an entire day of scattered multitasking chaos. The quality of your output will improve dramatically because it is now infused with the full, undivided power of your attention, and a reward far greater than productivity will emerge. The constant, low-grade anxiety of the scattered mind will be replaced by a profound sense of calm and control. You are no longer the victim tossed about by the digital hurricane. You are the calm, quiet, and powerful eye of your own storm. And in this newfound quiet, you will begin to experience one of the most sublime and satisfying states a human being can achieve. The state of flow. It is the state of being so completely immersed in your work that your sense of self, your worries, and the passage of time seem to disappear. You and the work become one. This state is the holy grail of productivity and fulfillment, and it is completely, utterly inaccessible to the distracted mind. The art of immediacy gets you onto the construction site. This principle, the building of a fortress for focus, ensures that when you arrive, you can actually perform the work. It is the discipline that makes deep work, and therefore a deep life, possible. But even within our impenetrable fortress, with our attention fully focused, we will be confronted by the nature of the work itself. The fact that it can be difficult, uncomfortable, and that our own brains will often resist it. This brings us to our next principle: how to act even when every fiber of your being is telling you to wait. We have now laid the first two great pillars of our personal architecture. With the art of immediacy, we have made the philosophical commitment to wage war on hesitation to close the gap between thought and action. With the fortress for focus, we have designed the external environment for this war, creating a sacred space free from the invading armies of distraction. We are now standing on the construction site, within the protected walls of our fortress, ready to lay the next brick. We have the intention, we have the focus. And yet, in this quiet, prepared space, we are immediately confronted by a new and far more insidious enemy. This enemy is not external. It does not buzz or ring. It is an ancient, powerful, and incredibly intelligent adversary that lives inside our own minds. In the landscape of literature and philosophy, it has been given many names. For our purposes, we will call it the resistance. This brings us to our third principle. This is not a broad strategy. It is a master tactic for the crucial, moment-to-moment battle against this internal foe. It is the principle of learning to act before the resistance mobilizes. To win a war, you must first know your enemy. So let us personify this force. The resistance is not you. It is a primal, pre-programmed, and impersonal force that exists within every human being. Its only goal is the maintenance of the status quo. Its entire purpose is to keep you safe, comfortable, and exactly where you are right now. It is the guardian of your current identity. Therefore, any attempt you make to grow, to improve, to become better, to build your cathedral, is perceived by the resistance as a mortal threat. Your desire to wake up earlier is a threat to its comfort. Your commitment to exercise is a threat to its conservation of energy. Your ambition to start a new enterprise is a threat to its fear of the unknown, and it will fight you with breathtaking cleverness at every single turn. But here is the crucial insight. The resistance does not speak with the voice of a monster. It does not sound like an external enemy. It speaks with your voice. It uses your own logic, your own intelligence, against you. It is the master of rationalization. It is the calm, reasonable voice that whispers, "You're clearly too tired today." A tired mind does poor work. The most productive thing you can do right now is rest. We can start fresh tomorrow. It sounds so wise. It sounds like self-care. But it is the resistance, cloaked in the language of reason. It is the prudent, cautious voice that says, "You should really do more research before you begin. A good plan is essential. Let's just spend a few more days planning to make sure it's perfect." It sounds so intelligent, but it is the resistance disguised as due diligence. Imagine your grandest potential as a hoard of treasure, locked away in a deep cave, and guarding that treasure is a great, sleeping dragon. That dragon is the resistance. As long as you stay far away from the cave, as long as you live a life of mediocrity and quiet wishing, the dragon sleeps peacefully. But the moment you take a single, decisive step toward that cave, the moment you decide to act on your potential, one of the dragon's eyes flickers open. It has sensed a threat to the status quo. If you pause, if you hesitate at the mouth of the cave, the dragon begins to stir. You hear a low growl of discomfort, of doubt. The longer you wait, the more it awakens, until it is a roaring, fire-breathing beast of fear and anxiety, blocking your path completely, convincing you that the treasure was never worth the fight. The art of immediacy, our first principle, is the decision to walk toward the cave. This third principle, act before resistance, is the secret to tiptoeing past the dragon while it is still drowsy and disoriented, before it is fully awake and mobilized. The battle against the resistance is not a long, drawn-out war. It is won or lost in a tiny, decisive window of time. It is the 5-second battlefield. It is the brief, precious moment between your initial, noble impulse to act and the full mobilization of your internal resistance. Let's look at the neurology of this moment. Your higher brain, your prefrontal cortex, the architect within, is what generates the noble idea. I should go to the gym now. I should make that difficult phone call. I should sit down and write. This is a signal of growth, a signal of change. Your lower, primal brain, your limbic system, the ancient dragon immediately flags this signal as a threat. It translates go to the gym into expend precious energy, experience discomfort, and leave the safety of the cave. It translates make that difficult phone call into risk, social rejection, and conflict. If you give this primal brain more than a few seconds, it will perform a neurological hijack. It will begin to flood your system with the subtle neurochemicals of avoidance. You will suddenly feel more tired. You will suddenly feel a compelling urge to seek comfort and distraction, to check your phone, to grab a snack, to turn on the television. These are not random impulses. They are the chemical weapons of the resistance, designed to pull you back to the safety of the status quo. This is where the master tactic comes into play. It is the tool you will use to win the 5-second battle every single time. It is a form of practical metacognition, the art of using your mind to manage your mind. The moment you have the impulse to act on a pre-decided, important goal, you must engage a simple mechanical sequence. You will count backward from 5, 4, san, r, 1. And the moment you hit 1, you will physically move. This is not a motivational trick. It is a neurological weapon. The act of counting backward is a focusing mechanism. It occupies the part of your brain that would otherwise be manufacturing excuses. You are giving your mind a simple linear task that interrupts the formation of the resistance narrative. And the physical movement at the end of the countdown is a declarative physiological act. It is your higher self, your architect, asserting command over your lower primal self. You are short-circuiting the hijack signal. You are acting before the dragon is fully awake. Think of standing at the edge of a cold plunge. It is a perfect metaphor for every important task in your life. If you stand there, hesitating, thinking about how cold the water will be, analyzing the temperature, debating the pros and cons, you will never get in. The resistance will win. It will build an invisible wall of anticipated discomfort that becomes impossible to breach. The person who succeeds is the one who quiets their mind and, in a single decisive moment of controlled insanity, just jumps. They act before the internal debate can paralyze them. The art of immediacy is deciding to go to the pool. This principle is the art of jumping in. To master this art, you must also understand the specific weapons the resistance will use against you, so you can preemptively disarm them. Its first and most powerful weapon is rationalization. As we discussed, the resistance speaks in your own, logical voice. It will present a masterful case for delay. The counter tactic to this is to embrace the philosophy of the imperfect start, which we touched on in our first principle. When the voice says, "You're too tired for a great workout," you do not argue. You simply agree and act anyway. You say, "You're right. I am tired, so I will not have a great workout. I will have a terrible workout, but I will have a workout." The goal is not a perfect start. The goal is simply to start. You disarm the rationalization by lowering the stakes to a level it cannot argue with. Its second weapon is the magnification of the task. The resistance will take a simple brick and make it look like the entire cathedral. The thought is not write one email. The thought becomes I have to deal with my entire disastrous inbox. The counter tactic is to shrink the target. Your focus is never on the cathedral. Your focus is only ever on the next, single, ridiculously small physical action. The action is not clean the house. The action is pick up one piece of trash. You disarm the magnification by refusing to look at anything beyond the immediate physical pebble in front of you. Its third weapon is the seductive promise of tomorrow. The resistance is the master of the future tense. Tomorrow is the mythical land where all your energy, all your focus, and all your motivation live. The counter tactic is to cultivate a deep, philosophical commitment to the primacy of the present. You must understand that later is an illusion. Tomorrow is a fantasy. The only point of power you ever have is right now. The only time you can lay a brick is in the present moment. By grounding yourself in this truth, you expose tomorrow as the empty promise it truly is. When you win this 5-second battle, when you act before the resistance mobilizes, you are doing more than just completing a task. You are physically rewiring your brain. Every time you succeed, you are weakening the neural pathways of hesitation and strengthening the neural pathways of action. The battle gets easier over time. The dragon does not disappear, but it becomes tamer. Its roar becomes a whimper. You build a new habit, the habit of action, which eventually becomes stronger than the old habit of resistance. And this is where the ultimate reward is born. It is the birth of true, earned self-trust. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer living in a state of internal civil war, with your higher self constantly battling your lower self, a battle that consumes so much of most people's life force. You begin to integrate. You begin to trust that when you decide to do something, it gets done. This internal friction, this constant battle with the resistance, is the source of so much of our anxiety and fatigue. When you learn to win this battle consistently, that energy is liberated. It becomes available for your real work, for creativity, for problem solving, for deep connection, for the actual building of your life's great work. The final result is a profound sense of agency. You are no longer a victim of your own moods, your lazy impulses, or your fleeting feelings. You are the one in command. You are the architect, not just of your external plans, but of your own internal state. This principle, then, is the daily, moment-to-moment martial art of the architect. It is the art of winning the smallest, shortest, and most important battle of all, the battle for the next 5 seconds. But even if we win this battle and begin the work, a series of frantic, immediate actions without an overarching plan is just a different form of chaos. The action must be channeled. It must be directed. This brings us to our next principle, the discipline of simplicity, and the art of crafting a plan that is as clear, as powerful, and as unbreakable as our newfound resolve to act. We have now confronted the great internal enemy. We have learned to win the battle for the next 5 seconds, to act with immediacy, to build a fortress for our focus, and to move before the resistance can build its walls. We have become warriors of action, but a warrior charging into battle without a clear and simple strategy is not brave. They are reckless. Action without intelligent direction is just another form of chaos. It is a flurry of motion that leads to exhaustion, not progress. The warrior must also be a brilliant strategist. And the greatest, most powerful, and most consistently overlooked strategy in the long war for a disciplined life is the strategy of simplicity. This brings us to our fourth, and perhaps most liberating, principle, the discipline of simplicity. We must begin by diagnosing a peculiar disease of the modern mind. It is the cult of complexity. In our information-saturated age, we have come to equate complexity with intelligence, with sophistication, and with value. We search for complex workout routines with dozens of exotic exercises. We design intricate productivity systems with color-coded labels and a multitude of apps. We create labyrinthine business plans and multi-phase personal development goals. We believe, at a deep and subconscious level, that a more complex plan is a better plan. This is a profound and debilitating error. Complexity is not the friend of execution. It is its greatest and most cunning enemy. Complexity is the perfect camouflage for the resistance. A complex plan, with its dozens of steps and dependencies, is a fertile breeding ground for the very hesitation we have just learned to fight. A complex plan creates confusion, and confusion is the anesthetic that the resistance uses to numb your will to act. When you are unclear about the next precise step, the easiest and most natural step to take is always nothing. The overwhelm of a complex plan provides the perfect, logical-sounding excuse to delay, to rethink, to wait for a moment of greater clarity that will never arrive. Imagine 2 generals on the eve of a great battle. The first general is a man of complexity. He spends weeks creating a battle plan that is a masterpiece of intricate detail. It has 50 distinct phases, each one dependent on the perfect timing of the last. It accounts for 100 variables. It is a work of theoretical genius. The second general is a woman of simplicity. Her plan is shockingly brief. She points to the single, most strategic hill on the battlefield, and gives a simple command. Our only objective is to take that hill. All efforts will be directed to that single purpose. On the day of the battle, the inevitable chaos of reality erupts. A sudden rainstorm turns the ground to mud. An unexpected enemy maneuver occurs. The first general's magnificent, complex plan shatters into 1,000 pieces at the first contact with friction. Its intricate dependencies cause a cascading failure. His army is paralyzed by confusion. The second general's army, however, continues to advance. The rain may slow them down. The enemy maneuver may force them to adapt their tactics. But the core objective remains brutally simple and clear in the mind of every soldier. Take that hill. We must learn to create take that hill plans for our lives. This requires a radical shift in our philosophy. We must come to understand that simplicity is not the starting point for the amateur. Simplicity is the final destination of the master. Any fool can make something more complex. It takes a profound level of thought, of insight, of courage to make something simple. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. It is the result of a ruthless, disciplined process of stripping away all that is non-essential to reveal the elegant, powerful, and effective core. This brings us to one of the most powerful mental models for a life of results, a concept known as the Pareto principle, or the law of the vital few. This law observes that in almost any domain, roughly 80% of the results come from only 20% of the efforts. 80% of the progress in your health will come from 20% of your health-related activities. 80% of the revenue in your business will come from 20% of your customers or products. 80% of your personal fulfillment will come from 20% of your relationships and experiences. The life of most people, the life of inconsistency, is a life spent busy in the trivial 80%. They spend their days on low-impact activities, on tasks that make them feel productive but do not actually move the needle. The architect, the master of simplicity, understands that their greatest task is not to do more, but to identify the vital few. The discipline of simplicity is the intellectual and strategic labor of identifying that crucial 20%. It is the art of discovering your lever. This brings us to a powerful analogy. Your daily plan should not be a magnificent, intricate machine. An intricate machine has 1,000 moving parts. It is a marvel of engineering, but it is also fragile. If one small, insignificant-looking gear breaks, the entire machine can grind to a halt. Your daily plan must be a simple, powerful lever. A lever is one of the most basic tools known to humanity. It has one pivot point. It is robust, it is reliable, and with a simple, focused application of force in the right place, it can move mountains. The work of the architect, then, is to stop building complex, fragile machines, and to start identifying and relentlessly pushing on the simple, powerful levers in their life. There is a story of the legendary football coach Vince Lombardi. On the first day of training camp each year, he would stand before his team of world-class, professional athletes, and he would hold up a football. And with the utmost seriousness, he would declare, "Gentlemen, this is a football." He would then spend the first weeks of camp drilling, over and over, the most basic, fundamental acts of blocking and tackling. His opponents would try to defeat him with complex, tricky, and innovative plays. But Lombardi's teams dominated because they had achieved a state of unconscious mastery in the simple, brutal, and effective fundamentals. He knew that victory was not found in complexity. Victory was found in the flawless and consistent execution of the simple, vital few. You must become the Vince Lombardi of your own life. So how do we do this? How do we, in practical terms, design this life of disciplined simplicity? There are 4 key tactics. The first is the one thing mandate. This is the essence of identifying your lever. For each major goal or area of your life, you must have the courage and the clarity to identify the one most vital daily action. Not the 5 most vital, the one. If your great goal is to improve your physical health, your one thing might be a 30-minute walk every single day. Not a complex rotation of weightlifting, cardio, and yoga. Just the simple, repeatable walk. If your goal is to build a new business, your one thing might be to make 3 new outreach calls every single day. Not to redesign the website, not to tinker with your logo, not to organize your files. 3 calls. This one thing becomes your daily non-negotiable. It is the primary brick you are tasked with laying each day. It is the simple lever you must pull. The rest of your day can be chaos, but if you have pulled that one lever, you have won the day. You have made progress. The second tactic is the subtraction method of planning. Most people approach their lives and their plans with a mindset of addition. They are constantly asking, what more can I do? What new habit can I add? What new project can I start? The architect of simplicity works by subtraction. They understand that their time, energy, and focus are finite, precious resources. The key to progress is not to add more, but to do less, better. They ask, what am I currently doing that is part of the trivial 80%? What can I remove from my life to create more space, more energy, and more focus for my vital few? You must have a stop doing list that is even more important than your to-do list. This is the art of strategic abandonment. It is the discipline of saying no to good opportunities so that you have the capacity to say yes to the truly great ones. It is the courage to prune the branches of your life so that the tree can bear more fruit. The third tactic is the binary task design. As we touched on in our last principle, a simple plan must be composed of simple, unambiguous bricks. Every task on your plan must be binary. That is, at the end of the day, it is either 100% complete or it is 0% complete. There is no middle ground. Work on the report is not a binary task. It is a source of ambiguity and self-deception. Write 200 words for the report is a binary task. At the end of the day, you either did it or you did not. Improve my health is not a binary task. Walk for 20 minutes is a binary task. This ruthless clarity removes all wiggle room for the resistance. It prevents the lie we tell ourselves that we worked on something, when in reality we just opened the file and stared at it. A simple plan is an honest plan, and a binary design is what makes it honest. The fourth and final tactic is the single tool rule. Resist the siren song of complex systems. You do not need 5 different productivity applications, a color-coded digital scheduler, 3 different cloud-based note-taking systems, and a wall of whiteboards to be consistent. In fact, these things are often just sophisticated forms of procrastination. The goal is to spend your energy on the work, not on managing the system that is supposed to manage the work. Choose one simple, reliable, and frictionless tool. For many of the greatest minds in history, this tool was a simple, plain notebook and a pen. Choose your single tool and use it relentlessly. The simpler the system, the more likely you are to use it when life gets messy. When you begin to build your life on this foundation of disciplined simplicity, a series of profound freedoms will be unlocked. The first is the freedom of clarity. A simple plan creates a calm and focused mind. You are no longer tormented by the overwhelm of 100 competing priorities. You know what matters. You know your one thing for the day. This clarity is the antidote to the pervasive anxiety that plagues the person of complexity. The second is the freedom of consistency. When your plan is brutally simple, consistency becomes the path of least resistance. It is easy to repeat a simple action. It is nearly impossible to repeat a complex one over the long term, especially on your stormy days. Simplicity is the engine of lifelong consistency, and this reveals the truth behind the power of the boring path. A simple plan, executed with relentless daily consistency, will feel boring. You must learn to see this boredom not as a problem, but as a signal that the system is working. The path to extraordinary, spectacular, long-term results is paved with ordinary, unimpressive, boring daily actions. The excitement is not found in the daily pulling of the lever. The excitement is found in the mountain that the lever, over time, begins to move. Simplicity, then, is the architect's final and most profound refinement of the blueprint. It is the act of stripping away all that is unnecessary to reveal the elegant, powerful, and effective structure within. It is the ultimate expression of intelligence and discipline. But even the simplest plan, the most powerful lever, is useless if we do not possess the profound and unshakable commitment to show up and pull it, day after day. What happens when the simple work gets hard? What happens when our initial resolve wavers and the thought of retreat begins to whisper in our ear? This requires us to go one level deeper, to make a decision so final and so absolute that it removes the very possibility of retreat from our psychological landscape. This brings us to our next principle, the point of no return. We have now arrived at the very heart of our architecture. We have learned to act with the swiftness of immediacy, to build a fortress to protect our focus, to move before the resistance can mobilize, and to operate from a blueprint of profound and powerful simplicity. We have the strategy. We have the daily tactics. We have everything we need to begin the work. And yet, all of this elegant architecture, the simple plan, the daily rhythm, the immediate action, all of it rests upon a single, final, and absolute foundation. Without this foundation, The entire structure, no matter how well designed, is nothing more than a temporary arrangement, destined to collapse at the first sign of a real storm. This foundation is the principle of total and unconditional commitment. It is the art of making a decision so final that it alters the very landscape of your future. It is the act of reaching the point of no return. Let us begin by diagnosing a subtle but pervasive malady of the modern mind. We live in a culture of optionality. From a very young age, we are taught to keep our options open. We are encouraged to try things out, to pivot if things don't go smoothly, to never get locked into a single path. This advice, while seemingly wise and prudent, has created a psychological pandemic. It has created a culture of conditional commitment. The person of conditional commitment says, I will commit to this diet as long as I see results in the first 2 weeks. They say, I will commit to building this business as long as it doesn't become too stressful. They say, I will commit to this relationship as long as a better, easier option doesn't come along. Their commitment is not a foundation of rock. It is a temporary contract with 1,000 escape clauses written in the fine print. And the most dangerous part of this mindset is the creation of the psychological backdoor. When you begin any worthy endeavor, any journey that promises real growth, and you leave yourself a backdoor, an escape hatch, an easy way out, you have already predetermined your own failure. Why? Because the path of all meaningful progress is, by definition, fraught with difficulty. There will be walls of resistance. There will be storms of doubt. There will be long, arduous plateaus where your efforts seem to produce no visible results. And in those moments, the moments of maximum difficulty, where do you think your mind will go? It will not focus on finding a way through the wall. It will immediately and instinctively gravitate toward the unlocked, unguarded, and easy to open back door. You will never commit the full measure of your creativity, your resourcefulness, and your resilience to solving a problem when you know, in the back of your mind, that you can simply quit. The very existence of the back door ensures you will never discover the reserves of strength you possess. It guarantees you will never see what magnificent landscapes lie on the other side of that wall of difficulty. Imagine 2 climbers attempting to scale a formidable mountain. The first climber is part of a well-funded expedition. He knows that if the weather turns, or if he feels tired, or if the path becomes too difficult, a helicopter is on standby, ready to be called to airlift him to safety from a halfway point. The second climber is on a solo expedition. She knows, with absolute certainty, that the only way off this mountain is to reach the summit and descend the other side. For her, a retreat is not an option. It is a physical impossibility. Now, when the inevitable blizzard hits, when the rocks become slick with ice, when their bodies are screaming with exhaustion, which of these 2 climbers do you think is more likely to dig deeper? Which one is more likely to innovate, to find a new route, to summon a reserve of strength they never knew they possessed? The answer is obvious. It is the climber for whom the back door does not exist. It is the climber who has no helicopter on standby. We must learn to climb the great mountains of our lives without a helicopter. This brings us to the core philosophy of this principle, a philosophy captured in a timeless and powerful metaphor. You must burn the boats. Throughout history, the greatest conquerors, the most audacious leaders, when landing on a hostile and unknown shore to face a superior enemy, have occasionally given a terrifying and brilliant command. They have ordered their own men to turn around and set fire to the very ships that brought them there. Can you imagine the psychological impact of that moment? To stand on a foreign shore and watch your only means of retreat burn and sink into the sea. This was not an act of recklessness. It was an act of profound psychological genius. It was a declaration to their army, to the enemy, and to the universe itself that there was no longer a plan B. There was no longer a path of retreat. There was only one direction, forward. There was only one of 2 outcomes, victory or death on that shore. In that single act, they had reached the point of no return. What does it mean for us, in our own lives, to burn the boats? It is not about being reckless or foolish. It is about making a decision so final, so clear, and so absolute that it fundamentally alters your perception of the challenges that lie ahead. It is the shift from I will try to do this to I will do this. Trying implies the possibility of failure. Doing implies only the eventuality of success. It is the shift from I will do this until it gets too hard to I will do this, no matter what. When you truly burn the boats, when you eliminate the option of retreat, a miraculous transformation occurs in the mind. Your mind, which was previously spending 50% of its precious energy scanning the horizon for an escape route, can now reallocate that 50% and dedicate 100% of its resources to finding a way forward. The question is no longer if you will succeed. The only question that remains is how. The creativity that this unlocks is astonishing. Problems that once seemed like insurmountable walls are now reframed as interesting puzzles to be solved. Obstacles are no longer seen as signals to stop. They are simply part of the terrain to be navigated. An insult becomes fuel. A setback becomes a lesson. A failure becomes invaluable data. True, total commitment does not just provide you with resolve. It supercharges your creativity and your resilience. So how do we do this? How, in practical terms, do we strike the match and set fire to our own boats of retreat? The first tactic is the public declaration. This is a form of creating accountability. You share your absolute, non-negotiable commitment with a few carefully selected people in your life, people whose respect you value. This is not for their applause or validation. This is to create a healthy social pressure that raises the psychological cost of quitting. It makes your decision real, tangible, and external to your own mind. It is harder to retreat when you know others are watching the shore. The second tactic is to perform a point of no return ritual. A decision this profound should not be a fleeting thought. It should be a formal event in your life's history. I want you to take out a piece of paper, a document that you will keep. And on this paper, you will write your own commitment contract. You will write down, with absolute clarity, the decision you have made. I, your name, do hereby commit to the path of your goal, and I will continue on this path, adapting and learning until the goal is achieved. Retreat is no longer an option. You will sign it, you will date it. This ritual may seem simple, but it is a powerful psychological act. It solidifies the decision, moving it from the abstract world of thought to the concrete world of physical reality. The third and most practical tactic is to kill the alternative. This is the literal act of burning your boats. It involves deliberately and systematically removing your backup plans and escape routes. If you are committing to a new healthy lifestyle, you burn the boats by going through your kitchen and throwing away every single piece of junk food. You are making it physically difficult to retreat to your old habits. If you are committing to building your new business in the evenings, you burn the boats by canceling the streaming service subscriptions and deleting the video games that have served as your escape route from boredom and hard work. If you are committed to financial discipline, you burn the boats by taking your credit cards, cutting them up, and closing the accounts. Each of these acts is a small physical declaration of your new, singular path. You are making it harder to go backward than to go forward. And the fourth tactic is the irreversible investment. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. A powerful way to solidify your commitment is to invest a significant and preferably non-refundable resource into your chosen path. This could be a significant financial investment in a course, a coach, or a piece of equipment. It could be a significant investment of your time, pre-committed on a calendar. This investment dramatically increases the sunk cost of your endeavor, making the thought of quitting and losing that investment far more painful. When you make this decision, when you truly burn the boats, you will discover the greatest paradox of all. The act of eliminating your options is the ultimate act of liberation. You are immediately freed from the constant, exhausting, low-grade anxiety of indecision. The mental noise of, should I continue? Is this the right path? Am I good enough? Maybe I should try something else. All of it is silenced. The debate is over. There is only the path. There is only the work. And in this newfound silence, a new strength is born. When you know you cannot retreat, you learn to endure. When you are faced with a wall, and going backward is not an option, you will find a way to go over it, under it, or through it. You will discover reserves of strength, of creativity, and of fortitude you never knew you possessed. You will learn that struggle is not a signal to quit. It is the necessary process of forging your character and your skill. And finally, as the transcript so wisely states, when quitting is no longer an option, showing up becomes your default setting. It is no longer a daily choice that requires a heroic act of willpower. It is simply what you do. It is who you are. It is the automatic response of the climber, for whom the only way is up. This principle, this absolute decision, is the engine that powers the entire architecture of a disciplined life. It fuels your immediacy. It protects your fortress of focus. It gives weight and meaning to your simple plan. But this decision, this commitment to the work, will inevitably be tested. It will be tested not in the public square, but in the quiet, lonely hours when no one is there to see your effort, when no one is there to applaud your sacrifice. This brings us to our next great discipline, the art of doing hard things, especially when no one is clapping. We have now reached the point of no return. We have made the philosophical decision to burn the boats, to commit ourselves fully to the path of the architect. This is the halfway point of our journey through the 10 disciplines, and it is the most critical. You have stayed for this long, which tells me you are not a casual observer. You are a serious student of this philosophy. You have felt the truth in these principles. If you are ready to honor the commitment you have just made to yourself, then I invite you to take the next small physical step to solidify it. Subscribe to this channel. Think of it not as clicking a button, but as signing your name to this new constitution for your life. It is your declaration that you are part of this community of builders, and it ensures you will not miss the essential principles of execution that are yet to come. Solidify your commitment. Subscribe now, and let us continue the work. We have now made the ultimate commitment. We have stood on the shores of our new endeavor and burned the boats of retreat. We have declared to ourselves and to the universe that the only path is forward. The decision is final. Our resolve is absolute. But this absolute commitment will now be tested, not in a single, glorious battle, but in a long, quiet, and often lonely war of attrition. It will be tested not by a great external obstacle, but by a great and profound internal silence. It will be tested in the thousands of unglamorous, uncelebrated hours of the work itself. This brings us to the principle that forges character in that silence. It is the discipline that separates the performer from the professional, the amateur from the master. This is principle number 6, the discipline of the unseen work. Let us begin by diagnosing a deep and pervasive hunger of the human condition, the hunger for applause. We are social creatures, and from our earliest days, we are conditioned to associate effort with external validation. As children, we draw a picture and immediately run to our parents, asking, "Do you like it?" We learn a new skill, and our first impulse is to perform it for the praise of others. This is a natural and human instinct. But in the modern world, this instinct has been weaponized. We live in an economy of applause. Through the mechanisms of social media and our performative culture, we have been trained to live our lives as if we are on a perpetual stage. We post our intentions, we broadcast our efforts, we showcase our small victories, and we are rewarded with the immediate, addictive, and digital equivalent of applause. The likes, the shares, the comments. This has created a generation of performers, not practitioners. It has trained our brains to associate the value of an action with the volume of its applause. And this leads to a critical and dangerous dependency. It leads us to rely on a shallow, fleeting, and ultimately hollow source of fuel: extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is the motivation of the performer. It is the desire for something outside of the work itself. It is the hunger for praise, for recognition, for a trophy, for a higher salary, for a greater status. It is a powerful fuel, yes. It can drive a person to great feats of effort. But it is a dirty and unreliable fuel. It is entirely dependent on forces outside of your control: the opinions of others, the whims of the marketplace, the judgment of the crowd. The architect, the person of consistency, must learn to operate on a different, higher-grade fuel source. They must learn to tap into the deep, quiet, and inexhaustible wellspring of intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the motivation of the craftsman. It is the drive that comes from within. It is the private satisfaction of a job well done. It is the love of the process itself. It is the profound sense of integrity that comes from acting in alignment with your own chosen values. It does not require an audience. It is not dependent on applause. It is the quiet, internal engine of mastery. Imagine 2 actors. The first actor performs for the roar of the crowd. His energy rises and falls with the volume of the applause. On a night when the audience is enthusiastic, his performance is brilliant. On a night when the audience is quiet or critical, his performance falters. His standard is external. He is a servant to the reaction of the crowd. He is a performer. The second actor performs for the integrity of the art itself. She is committed to delivering a truthful, powerful performance according to her own fiercely high internal standards. She performs with the same intensity and commitment whether the theater is sold out or whether there are only 3 people in the audience. The applause is appreciated, but it is not required. Her standard is internal. She is an artist. You must decide which you will be in the great performance of your own life. Will you be the performer, constantly looking to the audience for validation, or will you be the artist, committed to the integrity of your own work in the silence? This brings us to the great philosophy of the unseen. Consider a magnificent, ancient oak tree. We admire it for its towering height, for its strong, sprawling branches, and for its canopy of abundant leaves. This is the visible success. This is the public result. But the tree's true strength, its defining character, is not found in what is visible. Its ability to withstand the hurricane, its resilience in the face of a long drought, its very life force. All of this comes from the part of the tree that no one ever sees. It comes from the vast, deep, and complex root system, growing silently, patiently, and thanklessly in the cold, dark earth. The unseen work of your life is the cultivation of your roots. Most people spend all of their time and energy polishing their leaves, hoping to be admired by those who pass by, all the while neglecting the unseen, underground work that is the true source of all lasting strength. And what is this unseen work? It is the sum of the choices you make when you are completely and utterly alone. Character is not forged in the spotlight. Character is forged in the silent crucible of your private moments. It is the choice to get up at 5 in the morning when the alarm rings, when no one is there to see you, when the only witness is your own resolve. It is the choice to do the 10th repetition in your workout, when your trainer only asks for 9, and the only person who would know is the person you see in the mirror. It is the choice to sit down and read a difficult book that expands your mind, when you are alone in your house and the siren song of easy, mindless entertainment is calling to you from the other room. These silent, unseen, uncelebrated victories are the atoms that build the molecules of an unshakable character. This requires you to shift your entire frame of reference from an outer scorecard to an inner scorecard. The outer scorecard is how the world measures you. It is your job title, your bank account, the number of followers you have, the awards on your wall. It is the scorecard of applause. And it is a fickle, unsatisfying, and ultimately meaningless master. The inner scorecard is your own, private, and non-negotiable measure of your personal integrity. It asks only a few, simple questions at the end of each day. Did I do what I said I would do? Did I give my best effort, even when the work was difficult and unglamorous? Did I act in alignment with my own highest values? The person who is addicted to applause lives and dies by the outer scorecard. The person of discipline, the architect, lives and dies by the inner scorecard. It is the only scorecard that can bestow the ultimate prize, genuine self-respect. There is an old story of a traveler who came upon a construction site. He saw 3 stonemasons working in the hot sun, performing the same tedious task of cutting large blocks of stone. He approached the first stonemason and asked, "What are you doing?" The mason grumbled, looked at him with tired eyes, and said, "I am cutting this cursed stone. It is hard, boring work, and my back aches." The traveler moved on to the second stonemason and asked the same question. This mason replied, with a sense of weary duty, "I am earning a living to feed my family." Finally, the traveler approached the third stonemason. This man's work was just as hard, just as tedious, but there was a light in his eyes. When asked what he was doing, he paused, looked up at the vast, unfinished structure rising into the sky, and said with a quiet pride, "I am building a great cathedral." All 3 men were performing the exact same unseen work, but the third man had connected his small, repetitive, and uncelebrated daily action to a grand, transcendent purpose. He did not need the applause of the traveler. He did not need a supervisor to praise him. He was fueled by the knowledge that his unseen brick was a vital part of a magnificent, unseen vision. You must learn to see the cathedral in your daily stone cutting. So how do we cultivate this internal fortitude? How do we train ourselves to work in the silence? The first tactic is to adopt the audience of one principle. You must train yourself to see your own highest self, that ideal version of you, the finished architect, the person you are striving to become as your only true and final audience. Before you make a choice in the silent moments of your day, the choice to cut a corner, the choice to give in to a distraction, you must pause and ask one question. Would the person I am trying to become approve of this choice? This powerful question internalizes your drive for excellence. It detaches your standard of performance from the fleeting opinions of others and anchors it to the permanent and unwavering standard of your own highest values. The second tactic is to keep a private victory journal. At the end of each day, take 2 minutes, not to log your public achievements or the praise you received, but to write down 1 or 2 unseen victories. Today, I stayed focused for my entire 90-minute deep work block without a single distraction. Today, I felt the powerful urge to skip my workout, but I honored my base-level contract and went for my 10-minute walk. Today, I chose the difficult conversation over the comfortable silence. This simple practice trains your brain to value and seek the profound satisfaction of these private acts of integrity. It teaches your reward system to fire not just for applause, but for character. The third tactic is a courageous act of discipline, the deliberate disconnection from applause. In our age of performative living, you must deliberately choose to keep some of your work sacred and private. Do not post about every workout. Do not announce every small step of your new project. Do not seek validation for every good intention. Let some of the work be done just for you, for the audience of one. This is a form of fasting for the ego. It starves your needy attachment to external validation and forces your system to find a deeper, more sustainable internal source of fuel. When you practice this discipline, a profound shift begins to occur. You begin to develop a quality that is far more valuable and far more permanent than confidence. You develop self-respect. Confidence can be fleeting. It is often tied to a recent success or a wave of external praise. It can be given, and it can be taken away. Self-respect, however, is permanent. It is unshakable. It is not earned by what others think of you. It is forged, alone, in the silent fire of your own disciplined choices. It is the quiet, internal, and absolute knowledge that you are a person who does the hard things, especially when no one is watching. And with this self-respect comes the ultimate freedom. It is the freedom from the desperate, needy pursuit of applause. It is the freedom to act, to create, and to live from a place of internal alignment, not external validation. You become psychologically invincible. The opinions of others, both their praise and their criticism, cease to be the center of your emotional universe. You can accept praise with grace, without becoming addicted to it. And you can accept criticism with thoughtfulness, without being crushed by it. This, then, is the character of the architect. It is forged in the silent, uncelebrated hours of the unseen work. But even the most internally driven architect, working with the deepest integrity, can be derailed by a force that is even more intimate than the desire for applause. We must now turn our attention inward one last time to confront the most subtle saboteur of all, the comfortable lies and the polished excuses we tell ourselves. This brings us to our next principle, the discipline of radical honesty. We have now journeyed deep into the silent and sacred chambers of the architect's heart. We have committed to the discipline of the unseen work. We have made the profound choice to detach our efforts from the intoxicating drug of external applause and to anchor our sense of worth in the quiet, internal knowledge of a job well done. We have begun to forge an unshakable character in the lonely crucible of our private moments. We have built a commitment that does not require an audience. But even the strongest character, working with the purest intentions in the deepest silence, can be systematically undermined from within by a subtle, powerful, and ever-present saboteur. This saboteur is not an external force. It is the voice of our own sophisticated self-deception. It is the web of elegant lies and polished excuses we spin to protect ourselves from the uncomfortable truth of our own inaction. To defeat this intimate enemy, we must arm ourselves with the brightest, hottest, and most unforgiving of all lights, the light of truth. This brings us to the principle that serves as the clarifying agent for our entire architecture. This is principle number 7, the discipline of radical honesty. Let us begin by diagnosing the problem. An excuse is far more than just a reason for inaction. An excuse is a carefully crafted story. It is a story we tell ourselves with such conviction that we come to believe it. And the purpose of this story is to absolve us of responsibility. It is a psychological anesthetic that numbs the sharp, healthy pain of knowing that we are falling short of the person we have the potential to be. The voice of the resistance, which we learn to fight with immediacy, is also the master storyteller. And its stories are brilliant. They are not clumsy, obvious lies. They are sophisticated, nuanced, and deeply seductive. Consider the anatomy of a sophisticated excuse. First, there is the rational excuse. This is the most common. It sounds like I'm simply too busy today. I don't have enough time. But let us apply the light of radical honesty to this. Is it a true lack of time? Or is it a lack of priority? If a true life or death emergency arose, would you not instantly find the time? Of course you would. So, the statement "I don't have time" is a lie. The honest statement is, I have chosen to make other things a higher priority than my commitment to myself. That stings, and it is in that sting that the power for change is born. Next, There is the noble excuse. This is the most cunning of all. It cloaks our avoidance in the language of virtue. I need to skip my workout tonight to rest, so I can be more present for my family. I am not working on my business plan because I am practicing self-care. Now, rest and self-care are vital parts of a sustainable rhythm. But we must be brutally honest. Are we engaging in strategic, restorative rest, like the woodcutter sharpening his axe? Or are we using the noble language of self-care as a high-minded excuse to simply avoid the discomfort of necessary effort? The resistance loves to disguise itself as a saint. And finally, there is the prudent excuse. This is the excuse of the perpetual student. I am not ready to start yet. I need to do more research. I need to take one more course before I begin. This, as we know, is the voice of hesitation, masquerading as intelligence. It is the fear of an imperfect start, dressed in the robes of responsible preparation. Rational, noble, prudent. These are the masks that our laziness wears. And if we are not disciplined in our honesty, we will spend our entire lives admiring the masks while the true work remains undone. To build a life on a foundation of these small, daily excuses is like an architect knowingly building a great cathedral on a crooked foundation. For a while, the walls may go up. The structure may appear to be sound from a distance, but eventually, the accumulated weight of the enterprise, the unyielding pressure of reality, will expose the initial, hidden flaw. And the entire building will crack, shift, and collapse into a pile of sophisticated rubble. Your personal integrity is your foundation. Every single excuse you tell yourself is another small, hairline crack in that foundation. This is why we must adopt the philosophy of the unflinching mirror. This is the practice of looking at yourself, at your actions, at your inactions, and seeing what is truly there, not what you wish was there, not the story you have been telling yourself, just the plain, unvarnished truth. Radical honesty is not a one-time, dramatic confession. It is the daily, moment-to-moment practice of observing your own thoughts and behaviors, without judgment, but also without deception. It is the difficult, adult art of calling things by their true and proper names. Let us draw a sharp, clear line between two words that are often confused in our culture of comfort: rest and laziness. True rest is a strategic and essential component of any high-performing system. It is a deliberate, conscious, and scheduled activity. It is the surgeon taking a moment to reset between operations. It is the athlete's recovery day, designed to rebuild muscle. It is the woodcutter sharpening his axe. True rest is an active ingredient in the recipe for long-term success. It is restorative. Laziness is something else entirely. Laziness is the avoidance of a necessary and scheduled effort. It is hiding from discomfort. It is choosing the easy, distracting, and momentarily pleasurable path over the difficult, focused, and ultimately rewarding path. It is the woodcutter admiring his dull axe and telling himself he will sharpen it tomorrow. Laziness is not restorative. It is depleting. It drains your self-respect and your momentum. You must be honest enough to know the difference in your own life, and you are the only person who truly knows. But why is this honesty so critical? Because you cannot solve a problem that you refuse to accurately define. As long as you are telling yourself the story that I'm just overwhelmed, you remain a passive victim of your circumstances. It is a vague, foggy diagnosis that offers no clear path to a cure. But the moment you apply the harsh, clarifying light of radical honesty, the diagnosis changes. The story "I'm overwhelmed" becomes "I am avoiding writing this report because I am afraid that my boss will criticize it." Do you feel the power in that shift? The first is a fog. The second is a target. The moment you have a clear target, you can formulate a clear strategy. If I am afraid of criticism, perhaps I should break the task down into a smaller step to make it less intimidating. Perhaps I should review the project requirements one more time to build my confidence. Honesty creates clarity, and clarity is the parent of effective action. There is a timeless story of the emperor who had no clothes. A pair of swindlers convinces an entire kingdom that they are weaving a magnificent set of robes for their emperor, robes that are invisible to anyone who is incompetent or stupid. And so, from the emperor down to the common people, everyone participates in a great collective lie. They praise the beauty of the non-existent fabric, the elegance of the imaginary cut. They live in a shared fantasy, because the personal cost of telling the truth, of admitting they see nothing and thus being labeled a fool, is too high. The entire charade continues until a small, innocent child, who has not yet learned the art of sophisticated self-deception, points his finger and declares, with the brutal, clarifying honesty of the pure of heart. But the emperor is naked. In that moment, the collective illusion shatters. The truth, once spoken, cannot be unheard. We must become that child in the kingdom of our own minds. We must be willing to look at our own behavior, at our own carefully crafted excuses, and have the courage to say, but I am just being lazy, but I am just afraid, but I am just avoiding the discomfort. In the sting of that honest declaration, the power of the excuse is broken. Only then can we begin the real work of clothing ourselves in the actual robes of discipline and integrity. So how do we practice this difficult art? How do we build the muscle of radical honesty? The first tactic is a simple mental reflex. It is the call it what it is exercise. The moment you catch yourself making an excuse, you must pause. You must stop the narrative in its tracks, and you must accurately label it. When the voice in your head says, I'm too exhausted to go for a walk, you must pause and respond with internal clarity. That is the voice of avoidance. When you tell someone, I haven't had time to start, you must silently correct yourself. The truth is, I have not made the time. This simple act of internal labeling is a powerful pattern interrupt. It breaks the hypnotic spell of the rationalization and re-engages your conscious architect's mind. The second tactic is the practice of the brutally honest journal. This is a private, written ritual performed for your eyes only. At the end of each day, you will answer two unflinching questions. Question 1. Where did I trade my long-term architectural vision for the short-term comfort of a tenant today? Question 2. What was the specific story I told myself to justify that trade? This is not an exercise in self-flagellation. You are not writing these things down to feel guilty. Guilt is a useless emotion. You are doing this for the same reason a scientist keeps a meticulous lab notebook. You are seeking pattern recognition. You are studying the behavior, the tactics, and the favorite disguises of your own internal saboteur. With enough data, you can begin to anticipate its moves and preempt its attacks. The third tactic is to establish an accountability mirror. You must find one person in your life, a mentor, a trusted friend, a coach, to whom you give explicit permission to be your honesty mirror. This is a person you can go to and say, this is the story I am telling myself about why I am not taking action. I need you to tell me, does this sound like a legitimate reason, or does it sound like a sophisticated excuse? This external reflection is often necessary to shatter our most cherished and well-defended self-deceptions. When you commit to this discipline, when you begin to live a life unburdened by the weight of your own lies, a profound freedom emerges. The first freedom is a release of energy. Living in a state of self-deception is exhausting. It requires a constant, low-grade expenditure of psychic energy to maintain the stories, to justify the inaction, to manage the cognitive dissonance between who you say you want to be and what your actions demonstrate. When you commit to a life of truth, all of that energy is liberated. There is a profound lightness, a simplicity that comes from no longer having to perform, pretend, or justify. You are who your actions say you are, period. And that energy can now be reinvested into the real work of building. And the second and most important freedom is the birth of genuine self-respect. You cannot truly respect a person that you are constantly lying to. As long as you are deceiving yourself, your relationship with yourself will always be one of quiet contempt. When you stop lying to yourself, when you begin to treat yourself with the respect of unflinching honesty, you finally create the internal conditions where a deep and abiding self-respect can be born. You begin to trust yourself at the deepest level because you know you are no longer hiding from the truth. This principle, then, is the clarifying light that allows the architect to see their work and themselves with perfect clarity. Without it, you are building in the dark, pretending that crooked lines are straight and that a cracked foundation is sound. But even with perfect honesty illuminating our path, our actions can be diffused and weakened if we spend our precious energy justifying them to the outside world. We must now turn from the internal discipline of being honest with ourselves to the external discipline of quiet, focused execution. This brings us to our next principle, the discipline of doing the work without the need to explain it. We have now armed ourselves with the most clarifying and powerful of all internal disciplines, the discipline of radical honesty. We have committed to looking in the unflinching mirror, to seeing the truth of our own actions and inactions, without the comforting fog of sophisticated excuses. We are now operating from a place of internal truth, but there is another, more public, and equally seductive form of deception that the architect must learn to dismantle. It is the trap of substituting talk for action, of substituting performance for progress. It is the subtle art of explaining the work instead of doing the work. This brings us to a principle that demands a radical shift from the internal world of intention to the external world of results. It is the principle that builds our reputation, not with others, but with ourselves. This is principle number 8, the discipline of execution, not explanation. Let us begin by diagnosing a very common and very human behavior. It is the deep, innate desire to explain ourselves. We feel a compelling need to explain our plans, to explain our struggles, to explain our delays, and to explain our intentions. But we must ask ourselves, with the radical honesty we have just cultivated, what is the true purpose of this explanation? For most people, the act of explaining serves several seductive but ultimately destructive purposes. First, we explain as a way of seeking premature validation. We have a grand idea, a new plan, and before we have laid a single brick, before we have taken a single step, we announce it to the world. Why? Because we are seeking the applause, the encouragement, the external validation that we have not yet earned through action. We want to feel the reward of the achievement before we have endured the process of achieving. It is a way of getting a small taste of the finish line, without ever having to run the race. Second, we explain as a way of managing perceptions. When we fall behind, when we fail to meet our own standards, our first impulse is often to craft a story, an explanation that will manage how others see us. We want to make sure they know we are trying. We want them to understand the legitimate obstacles we are facing. We are performing the role of a diligent, hardworking person, even when our results tell a different story. And third, and most insidiously, we explain as a substitute for action. The very act of talking about the work can provide a small psychological release. It can create a fleeting feeling of progress without any actual progress being made. It is a close and dangerous cousin to the wishful thinking we have already rejected. It is the illusion of motion without any forward movement. We must learn to distinguish between two seemingly similar but profoundly different states: motion and action. Motion is being busy. It is having meetings about the work. It is creating spreadsheets to track the work. It is researching new strategies for the work. It is organizing your desk to prepare for the work. And, most commonly, it is talking about the work. Motion feels productive. It looks like work, but it produces no tangible result. It is the act of spinning your wheels in the mud. Action is different. Action is the specific, tangible, and often uncomfortable act of laying the next brick. It is making the sales call. It is writing the next line of code. It is lifting the weight. It is sitting in the chair and writing the first imperfect sentence. Action is the only thing that produces a result. The life of most people is a life of constant motion, mistaken for action, and their primary, favorite form of motion is explanation. Imagine two builders on a large construction site. The first builder arrives in the morning and spends the first 3 hours talking to everyone he meets. He explains the blueprint in magnificent detail. He describes the structural challenges he anticipates and the innovative techniques he plans to use. He talks with great passion about how hard he is going to work that day. At the end of the day, his section of the wall is completely untouched, but he has a very compelling story about why. The second builder arrives, says little, picks up a brick and some mortar, and begins the quiet, unglamorous work. He does not talk about the blueprint. He simply follows it. He does not talk about the challenges. He simply solves them as they arise. At the end of the day, his section of the wall is built. It is not a story. It is a fact, written in stone. The first is a performer of work. The second is a practitioner of work. You must decide which you will be. This brings us to a core philosophy of the architect. You must learn to speak the silent language of results. Results are the only universal, honest, and undeniable language in the enterprise of life. Your intentions, your excuses, your explanations, these are all spoken in a private, subjective language. They require translation. They require trust. They require the other person to believe your story. Results require no translation. Results require no defense. They require no backstory. A finished wall is a finished wall. A completed project is a completed project. A healthy body is a healthy body. It simply is. Its existence is its own, irrefutable argument. The universe does not respond to your explanations. The universe responds to your actions. The scale in your bathroom does not care about your eloquent explanation for why you ate the cake. It only measures the result. The marketplace does not care about the beautiful story of why your product is delayed. It only rewards the product that is delivered. Your own future self does not care about the sophisticated reasons why you hesitated. It will only inherit the consequences of your execution or your lack thereof. You must earn the right to speak. The time for a detailed explanation is after the result has been produced, not before. The master craftsman can walk you through his technique after the beautiful table is finished. The successful entrepreneur can tell the story of their long and difficult journey after the business is profitable and stable. To explain your process before you have produced a result is to ask for credit on a loan you may never be able to repay. You must earn the right to explain through the hard, cold currency of execution. There is a story from ancient Roman history of a general named Fabius. Rome was facing a dire threat from the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal. The other Roman generals and politicians were clamoring for a great, glorious, decisive battle. They wanted the explanation of Roman strength. They wanted the performance of a grand victory. But Fabius, a man of profound wisdom, knew that a direct confrontation with Hannibal was likely to be a disaster. He chose a different path. It was a path of quiet, persistent, and unglamorous attrition. He shadowed Hannibal's army, launching small, strategic attacks on his supply lines, refusing to be drawn into a major battle. Back in Rome, he was criticized. He was mocked. He was called a coward. He was stripped of his command. But Fabius did not waste his energy explaining his strategy. He did not waste his time defending his reputation. He simply continued to execute his quiet, patient, and effective plan. His relentless, quiet execution eventually wore down Hannibal's army, exhausted its resources, and saved Rome from destruction. He let the result victory be his only explanation. His actions spoke so loudly that his words were not needed. So how do we cultivate this discipline of quiet, relentless execution? How do we let our actions become our argument? The first tactic is to adopt the work first, talk later rule. You must make this a private, personal policy. You are not allowed to talk about a new goal, a new project, or a new habit until you have put in a significant and predetermined amount of unseen work. For example, you might make a rule. I will not tell anyone about my idea for a book until I have written the first 10,000 words. Or, I will not talk about my new fitness regimen until I have completed it consistently for 30 days. This simple rule does two powerful things. First, it starves your ego's need for premature validation. It forces you to find your fuel from an internal source, from the satisfaction of the work itself, as we learned in our principle of the unseen work. Second, it builds a foundation of real, tangible progress before you expose your idea to the world, making your eventual announcement one of substance, not of mere intention. The second tactic is to distinguish between an internal memo and a public announcement. When you formulate your plan, your simple take that hill objective, you must treat it as a secret, sacred, internal memo. It is a private contract between you, the architect, and your work crew, your daily actions. Resist, with all your might, the urge to turn this internal memo into a public press conference. The energy that you would spend crafting the announcement, anticipating the reaction, and explaining the vision must be channeled with laser-like focus into the first, immediate, physical action. The third tactic is the answer with action technique. Inevitably, you will face setbacks. You will miss a deadline. You will fall short of a goal. In these moments, the temptation to explain will be immense to your boss, to your team, to your family, to yourself. You must train a new response. Instead of answering with an explanation, you must learn to answer with a new action. If a project is behind schedule, a long explanation of the reasons is irrelevant and a waste of time. The only valid, professional, and respectable response is to present a new, revised plan with a clear, immediate, and actionable first step. Let the next brick you lay be your apology. Let the renewed momentum of your work be your explanation. And the fourth tactic is to commit, once and for all, to the practice of deep work. A life of execution is a life of deep, focused, uninterrupted work. This means scheduling and ruthlessly protecting large blocks of time for pure execution. This practice naturally and automatically solves the problem of over-explaining. When you are truly and deeply immersed in the difficult work of building, you simply have no time and no energy left for the shallow work of talking. When you adopt this discipline, when you commit to a life of execution over explanation, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as a person with great ideas or a person with great potential. You begin to see yourself, with the quiet confidence of evidence, as a person who gets things done. This is the profound shift from an identity of potential to an identity of substance. And with this, a new kind of confidence is born. The confidence that comes from talking a good game is brittle. It is hollow. It is terrified of being tested by reality. The confidence that is forged from a long, quiet, and undeniable history of personal execution is unshakable. It is not based on what you think you can do. It is based on the mountain of factual evidence of what you have done. The ultimate reward of this principle is becoming a person of your word, not just to others, but most importantly to yourself. You become reliable. This reliability creates a life of profound calm and personal power. You are no longer tossed about by the drama of your own excuses and justifications. There is only the blueprint, and there is only the work. This discipline of execution is the final, external expression of all the internal disciplines we have cultivated. It is the point where the architect's private vision finally becomes a public reality, written not in words, but in stone. But even the most dedicated and quiet executor will find that some days, the work just doesn't feel finished, or that the finish line seems impossibly far away. We must now learn the final art of the architect on the ground, the art of completion, and how to train our minds not just to start, but with relentless tenacity, to finish. And this will be our next principle. We have now arrived at a place of profound personal power. We have committed to a life of radical honesty with ourselves and a life of quiet, relentless execution with the world. We have become the practitioner, not the performer, the builder, not the talker. We are on the construction site, laying our bricks with a simple plan and a sustainable rhythm. But a life of execution is measured not by the number of bricks we lay in a day, but by the number of walls we complete in a lifetime. It is measured not by the number of projects we courageously begin, but by the number we have the tenacity to finish. This brings us to a discipline that separates the amateur from the master, the dabbler from the dedicated, the person of fleeting enthusiasm from the person of lasting substance. It is the final, and perhaps most defining, art of the architect on the ground. This is principle number 9, the art of completion. Let us begin by diagnosing a curious and seductive addiction of the modern mind, the addiction to starting. Our culture celebrates beginnings. The launch of a new business is met with fanfare. The declaration of a new diet on January 1st is met with applause. The blank page, the fresh start, the new project, these things are intoxicating. They are filled with the pure, unblemished drug of infinite potential. In the beginning, anything is possible. The book you are about to write could be a masterpiece. The business you are about to launch could change the world. In this initial phase, you get to experience the thrill of the potential outcome without any of the messy, difficult, and imperfect reality of the actual work. And many people become addicted to this feeling. They are serial starters. They are masters of the first chapter. They love the excitement of a new idea, the rush of a new commitment. But as soon as the initial emotional high fades, as soon as the work becomes difficult and the potential becomes finite, they abandon the project and go in search of their next fix, the next new, exciting beginning. The world is filled with brilliant starters, but the world is built and run and owned by the finishers. We must ask ourselves, why do we secretly fear the finish line? The fear of finishing is real, and it is twofold. First, to finish something is to make it real. As long as the project is a dream, an idea, a work in progress, it can remain perfect in your mind. But the moment you declare it done, it becomes a finite, tangible, and therefore imperfect thing. It can now be seen, it can be assessed, it can be judged. And the fear of that judgment, the fear that the reality will not live up to the perfect fantasy, is what keeps many people in a perpetual state of almost finished. Second, to finish something means you must confront the terrifying question, what's next? It means you must leave the comfort and familiarity of the current project and step back out into the unknown. For many, the process of the work, even when difficult, becomes a kind of refuge. Finishing means that refuge is gone. Imagine a brilliant shipbuilder. He loves the entire process of building a ship. He loves the smell of the fresh-cut wood, the intellectual challenge of the blueprints, the satisfying feeling of a new hull taking shape. His harbor is filled with a dozen magnificent, beautiful, and 90% finished ships. He is a master starter, a master builder, but he is secretly terrified of the sea. To finish a ship, to put on the final coat of paint and rig the last sail, means he must launch it. He must push it out of the safety of the harbor and into the unpredictable, dangerous, and storm-tossed waters of the open ocean. And out there, the ship might face a storm. It might spring a leak. It might even sink. And so, to protect himself from the possibility of seeing his creation fail, he never lets it leave the harbor. He is a shipbuilder who is afraid of the purpose of a ship. You must not be this shipbuilder. The purpose of your work is not to remain safe in the harbor of your own process. The purpose is to launch. The purpose is to finish. This brings us to the most difficult and most character-defining part of any worthy journey. It is the part of the journey that makes or breaks the architect. It is the part of the process that serial starters can never endure. It is the messy middle. Every worthwhile project in human history has three parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning is the honeymoon. It is the exciting phase, fueled by the passion of a new idea and the drug of infinite potential. The end is the victory. It is the satisfaction of the finish line, the pride of completion, the reward for the effort. But the middle is the grind. The messy middle is the long, arduous, and unglamorous plateau where the initial excitement has completely faded, but the finish line is not yet in sight. It is where the purposeful boredom we spoke of becomes a daily reality. It is where you are confronted with unexpected problems, with setbacks, with the sheer, monotonous weight of the work. The messy middle is where most people quit. It is the great graveyard of good intentions. But here is the great truth. The messy middle is not an obstacle to be endured on the way to the finish line. The messy middle is the path. It is where the real work is done. It is where you learn. It is where you solve the difficult problems. It is where your initial, flimsy motivation is burned away and replaced by something far stronger and more permanent: character. A finisher is not simply a person who is good at finishing. A finisher is a person who has mastered the art of navigating the messy middle. Their identity is not, "I am a great starter," or "I love to win." Their identity is, "I am the person who keeps going when the work is no longer new, when it is no longer easy, and when it is no longer fun." Think of a marathon runner. Any enthusiastic amateur can run the first mile with a smile on their face, full of energy and adrenaline. The beginning is easy, but the true race, the place where the marathon is won or lost, is at mile 20. At mile 20, the initial adrenaline is a distant memory. The body is screaming in protest. The mind is plagued with the desire to stop, and the finish line is still a distant, almost imaginary point on the horizon. The marathon is a perfect metaphor for any meaningful goal in your life. Your ability to find a way to take the next step at mile 20 is the single greatest determinant of whether you will ever have the satisfaction of crossing a finish line. So how do we train this finishing muscle? How do we become a master of the messy middle? The first tactic is the close the loops discipline. This is a powerful, and at first, difficult practice. You must make a personal rule. Before you are allowed to start a new project, you must first go back and complete an old one. Go through the files on your computer, the notebooks on your shelf, the projects in your garage. Find something you started with passion and abandoned in the messy middle. And before you allow yourself the intoxicating pleasure of a new beginning, you must force yourself to experience the disciplined satisfaction of an old ending. This practice does two things. First, it forces you to confront the graveyard of your own good intentions and begin the cleanup process. Second, it trains your brain, through direct experience, that the only path to a new start is through a determined finish. The second tactic is to define done before you start. One of the primary reasons we get lost in the messy middle is because we have a vague, shifting, and undefined finish line. The goalposts keep moving, so we never feel like we are getting closer. Before you lay the first brick of any new project, you must, as a non-negotiable part of your blueprint, write a clear, objective, and binary definition of done. A bad, vague definition sounds like, finish the book. A clear, architectural definition sounds like, complete a 70,000-word manuscript, run it through a final spell check, and send it to 3 beta readers by December 31st. This creates a clear, unambiguous target. You know exactly what the finish line looks like, which allows you to measure your progress against it and to know, with absolute certainty, when the work is complete. The third tactic is the power of the public finish line. While we have learned the importance of doing the unseen work for its own sake, setting a public deadline can be a powerful commitment device to force you through the messy middle. Announce a launch date for your product. Schedule the final presentation for your project. Buy the non-refundable plane tickets for the trip you are saving for. This is a form of burning the boats. By creating an external expectation of completion, you manufacture a positive pressure that makes the discomfort of quitting greater than the discomfort of continuing the work. And the fourth tactic is the finisher's review. After you complete any project, no matter how small, you must perform a ritual of closure. You must pause. You must deliberately acknowledge the completion. You must take a moment to review the journey. What did I learn in the messy middle? What obstacles did I overcome? What part of my character was forged in that struggle? This act of conscious and deliberate closure is vital. It trains your brain to associate the act of finishing not just with relief, but with a profound sense of pride, learning, and growth. It reinforces, at a neurological level, the identity of being a finisher. This brings us to the ultimate currency we are dealing with in this principle. It is the currency of self-trust. Every project you begin and leave half done is a small withdrawal from your account of self-trust. It is a broken promise to yourself. It is a piece of evidence that your word, even to yourself, is not reliable. Over time, a history of these withdrawals will bankrupt your confidence. You will stop believing your own intentions because your own past has proven them to be meaningless. Conversely, every project you see through to completion, no matter how small, is a powerful deposit into that same account. The act of finishing is the ultimate act of keeping your word to yourself. It is the evidence that builds a deep, quiet, and unshakable form of self-respect. This is the true and lasting prize. You must understand, the world does not belong to the brilliant starters. It does not belong to the talented dreamers. It was not built by people with good intentions. The world you see around you, the bridges, the books, the businesses, the art, the institutions, all of it is the product of the finishers. It is the residue of a million messy middles that were successfully navigated by someone who had the tenacity, the grit, and the character to push through. The art of completion, then, is the discipline that gives meaning to all the others. It is the act that transforms all of your noble efforts from mere activity into real and tangible achievement. It is the final act of alchemy that turns a blueprint into a cathedral. But even the most dedicated finisher will lay a brick crookedly. Even the most masterful architect will see a wall collapse. Our final challenge, our capstone principle, is to build a system that is not destroyed by these inevitable mistakes, but is actually made stronger by them. This brings us to the ultimate art of the architect, how to build a system that works even when you fail. We have now reached the final archway of our cathedral, the capstone principle that locks the entire structure together and gives it its ultimate unshakable strength. We have journeyed far. We have learned to act with immediacy, to build a fortress for our focus, to move before the resistance can mobilize, to govern our days with the genius of simplicity, to commit to the point of no return, to work in the silence, to be radically honest, to execute without explanation, and to master the art of completion. We have built a magnificent and robust system for a disciplined life. But all of this, every single principle, every tactic, every philosophy, rests upon a single, final, and terrifyingly beautiful assumption. It is an assumption that, once fully embraced, separates the child from the adult, the servant from the master, the tenant from the architect. This is the assumption of total and complete responsibility. This is our 10th and final principle, the principle that serves as our conclusion and our commencement, the declaration of sovereignty. Let us begin by diagnosing the great human fallacy, the most common and comforting delusion known to mankind. It is the hope for a savior. From our earliest days, we are conditioned to look outside of ourselves for the solution. As a child, when we are in trouble, we cry out for a parent to come and fix our problem. As a student, we look to the teacher to provide us with the right answers. And as adults, this deeply ingrained habit continues, though in more sophisticated forms. We wait for the government to fix the economy. We wait for our boss to recognize our talent and give us the promotion. We wait for a mentor to appear and show us the secret path. We wait for a new book or a new seminar to finally provide the magic bullet that will change everything. We wait for a partner to come and make us feel whole and happy. This is the waiting sickness. It is a passive, hopeful, and ultimately impotent state of being. And it is the default state of most people. The other side of this same coin is the insidious poison of blame. If we believe, at a subconscious level, that someone else is responsible for saving us, then it is a very short and logical step to believing that someone else is responsible for our current predicament. The voice of blame is the anthem of the victim. My parents didn't teach me this. My boss doesn't appreciate me. The system is rigged against me. My circumstances are too difficult. And the tragedy of these statements is that they may even contain an element of truth. But here is the great non-negotiable law of a powerful life. Blame is a cage. The moment you blame an external force for your situation, you have handed over all of your power to that force. The person who blames is, by definition, a victim. And a victim has no agency. A victim cannot create. A victim cannot build. A victim can only wait and hope and complain. Blame may offer the temporary comfort of absolving you of responsibility, but it does so at the cost of your freedom. Imagine you are a passenger on a great ship at sea. The passenger can complain about the quality of the food. They can complain about the storm on the horizon. They can complain about the direction the ship is heading. And they can spend all of their time hoping that the captain is a good one, someone who knows how to navigate the storm and bring them safely to a beautiful port. The passenger's life is one of hope and complaint. The architect, the sovereign, understands a fundamental truth. You are not a passenger on the ship of your life. You are the captain. You are at the helm. And the moment you fully and completely accept this, the entire world changes. The direction of the ship, the maintenance of the engine, the readiness of the crew, and the navigation through the storm. It is all your responsibility and yours alone. This is our declaration of sovereignty. To declare your sovereignty is the ultimate act of maturity. It is the profound internal recognition that you are the primary causal force in your own life. It is the quiet, firm, and unwavering statement. The outcome of my life from this moment forward is up to me. It is the acceptance of 100% responsibility, with 0% blame and 0% excuses. Now, this is a terrifying thought. It must be, because it means there is no one else to point to. There are no more hiding places. The safety net of blaming your past, your circumstances, or other people is gone. You are standing alone at the helm, and the vast, open ocean of your future is before you. But I want you to feel what is on the other side of that terror. On the other side of that terror lies the ultimate and most profound freedom a human being can experience. The moment you stop waiting for a savior is the moment you become your own. The moment you stop blaming is the moment you reclaim your absolute power to change. The chains of victimhood, which you may have been wearing for your entire life, simply fall away. The universe, the marketplace, life itself, it has a fascinating way of responding to this shift. It does not reward neediness. It does not respond to blame. It responds to ownership. When you approach a difficult situation with the energy of, whose fault is this? You will be met with defensiveness, conflict, and stagnation. When you approach the very same situation with the new energy of, this is my ship, and I am the captain. How do I solve this? You will find that resources, allies, and creative solutions begin to appear as if by magic. Imagine a person who inherits a dilapidated, neglected farm. The fences are broken, the fields are overgrown with weeds, and the soil is barren. This is a metaphor for the circumstances of a life. The person with the tenant mindset, the victim mindset, will spend their years cursing the person who left them the farm in such a state. They will complain about the poor soil and the lack of rain, and they will sit on the porch, waiting for someone to come and help them fix it. And their life will remain a wasteland. The person of sovereignty has a different response. They stand on that same piece of land, and they make a declaration. They say, the state of this farm in the past is irrelevant. From this moment forward, this land is my responsibility. The work begins today. That person does not wait. They pick up the first tool they can find, and they begin the long, arduous, and noble work of pulling the first weed. They begin to transform the wasteland into a paradise, not by blaming or waiting, but by declaring and exercising their sovereignty over that small patch of earth. You must declare sovereignty over the small patch of earth that is your life. This declaration of sovereignty is not a 10th and final principle that you add to the list. It is the philosophical foundation upon which the other 9 principles are built. It is the sun around which they all orbit. Let us see this clearly. Let us review the constitution of this new, sovereign life. A sovereign does not wait for the feeling of inspiration, for their power is internal. They rule their life with the art of immediacy. A sovereign understands that their attention is their kingdom's most precious treasure, and they do not allow it to be plundered. They build a fortress for their focus. A sovereign is the master of their own internal state, not its victim. They act before the resistance can stage a coup. A sovereign is not distracted by the chaos of complexity, for they govern with the profound and elegant power of a simple plan. A sovereign's commitment to the future of their kingdom is absolute. They have reached the point of no return, for their kingdom has no path of retreat. A sovereign's self-worth is not derived from the fickle applause of the crowd, but from the quiet integrity of their unseen work. A sovereign is not afraid of the truth, for their entire rule is based on the clarifying and unforgiving light of radical honesty. A sovereign's authority is demonstrated not through grand pronouncements and promises, but through the silent, undeniable language of execution, not explanation. A sovereign is not a dabbler in many things, but a master builder, defined by their relentless commitment to the art of completion. And all of this is possible because the sovereign has made the ultimate declaration, the one that precedes all others. Nobody is coming to save me. I am the one responsible. And so, we come to the end of our study. The blueprint is complete, the philosophy is clear, the tools are in your hands. But our time together has not been the work. It has been the final review of the plans before the true work begins. The work of the architect begins now, in the quiet moments after this lecture ends. You now stand at the great crossroads, a choice from which you can never retreat. You can no longer claim the comfort of ignorance. You now know the difference. You can choose the path of the passenger, the wide, easy, and well-trodden path of waiting and hoping and complaining. You can remain a tenant in the house of your circumstances. Or you can choose the path of the captain, the path of the architect, the path that is harder today, but that leads to a life of substance, of freedom, of profound self-respect. Your first act as the sovereign of your new life is not a grand gesture. It is a small, quiet, and immediate action. It is the decision to take one piece of this philosophy, one principle, and to apply it today, not tomorrow, not next week. Now, the journey of the architect does not begin with a great leap. It begins with the laying of a single brick. Your first brick is not a physical action. It is a decision. The decision, made right now, that from this day forward, you are the captain. You are the architect. You are responsible. Your second brick is a commitment. After this lecture ends, take out a pen and paper. Define the one area of your life over which you will now declare your sovereignty. And define the one simple brick you will lay today to begin its reconstruction. And your third brick is a commitment to your own ongoing education as the architect of your life. Subscribe to this channel as a declaration of your commitment. Save this blueprint so you can review it when the storms of life test your resolve. And share this philosophy with one other person who you know is ready to stop being a passenger and start being a captain. Our time together is complete. But your time, your true time, is just beginning. The pen is in your hand. The marble is before you. The future is an unwritten page. Go and write a masterpiece.